Hello, David.
Lukey,
Hey, mate.
you there, mate?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Let
great.
me see, I'll just turn some sound off a little bit here. So,
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Jubb. I got
oh,
worried today.
yeah. Ah, I was wondering, yeah. It's amazing because I was thinking of some things which life begets life and dead begets dead. That's a pretty good topic, isn't it? Because
Oh, yes.
it's a maximum. It just means that you put life together in the same category and you don't put, a rock in there or a desk or something or a chair in the same category. And that's a maximum. So you can only join like with like. So, for eons, you could go back into the past and you could see a great legacy of common law, which all contract is under the Magna Carta ever since. And it's only that all this, which is really what holds the world together, is contract, And basically, like if you've got in the Milgram, like what we talk about, you've got a certain percentage of people, which, 67, I think it is, or something,
Yeah.
percent is what would follow an order, and you would forego whatever your own consciousness was, where some authority was that said do that. You see,
Mm-hmm.
and so everybody is under an agentic state, and then the rest of the rest were people who couldn't obey, a unlawful order. No matter what, they just couldn't obey an unlawful order, and that was like quite a bit of a percentage. Nice to say that that's kind of like 33%. That's a nice number, isn't it?
Ah.
And it's everybody who tunes into our shows and things and stuff, really, and so the pen is mightier than the sword, and what change shouldn't cause hiccups to people, but you could see a chaos existed, and unless we could take charge. But when
Oh, boy.
title was removed, when any title, especially like the title of Wu Man, that's our species, and then you were given a title which would be like a profession or a commercial profession, so that's not a proper title, or
Mm-hmm.
an office in a government, that's not a proper title. Of course, that's a title, that's a fictional title, but it's not a living title, and you can't say from that. Only that you could if it came from the living and a body of the living, and this is We the People, which is the fourth estate.
Nice.
And basically, you and I or anybody doesn't have to influence anything because something is very organic of its own self, and where any demand is, it's nature wants to fulfill that demand, and that's this strange attractor which ushers more in a golden age where we are in your own self, little by little. That is something which 33% of us can feel something, and it's really the others that shift into an agentic state more themselves. And it's really by pieces of science and things that you have underneath you, but where somebody is aware, which many are, that the whole system is set up more by one nation to spy on another nation, and that makes that maybe lawful, but it doesn't. It's not. And so, everything has gone all over the place by one group that just uses that organisation to cause friction wherever anybody else is. But it's where you and I no longer are in the fictional component of ourselves and dead, and that we rise up above what that is, which is only the living, and that living is above the dead. Dead I'm talking about in a fictional term, yes? That means that because, like a mirror image is dead. It's a subject, like, for instance, not you, who is living, who is beyond the subject. A subject is just something somebody has in their head. And so, you certainly aren't some selected mentality like a colour of mind, like a human, for instance, or, a son of a purr, or a democrat, or a, any other word doesn't have a natural right that flows from it. And that should be put back into a document because, you have a real true name and people could be woken up a bit where things are. Let's see. So your natural right really flows from your title. And we can all replace words like king, queen, baron, and all these words as we the people under the Magna Carta. Because under a circumstance where you have a proper ID, a real true ID, you haven't got a abridged title of your right, and you've got your natural rights unabridged to be able to settle things, and all would be able to, because you've got credit that's there to draw upon for things in a future moment, because this new age is getting rid of jobbery. You see, a jubilation is getting rid of jobbery. So jobbery really is just the pretending services for some financial gain, and that really isn't heaven much, no. Because heaven really is there's the space between two children playing, and that's heaven. And evil is really what just is not letting that be in a manner of being, and that's what really doesn't sleep. So you could say evil really doesn't sleep, and so it's really people taking action where you can, but it's really the pen that's mightier than the sword, and that's not violence whatsoever, not at all. That's wrong. Matter of fact, it really is. Why should there not be care for where someone is? Many have had to perform to do things, and that's so important in care, because everybody that you could, whereby looking at the Milgram experiment, you could see most people are under an agentic state. So rather than be, lost at sea, one could come more into the Holy See, of course, like what we're talking about, which really is more divine, where, all can live life more abundantly. Yeah. So anybody's intention really is heaven, of course, where this is on earth, and this is the fourth estate. This is where the people, and this really is prophesied, of course, in the rainbow prophecy, as some shiftedness which happens as a result of all this, which moves all into the golden age of Aquarius. And so some things which are writings are very epochal. If people could go to jubbdavid.com, they could look up more about this, where the part of the hollow bones is and things. Anybody could learn there about paperclip, of course, and how that CBCOA system, along with Intel and Special Ops, and those are all fraternized organizations relative, which in history, when you have given power away where that is, it's really abused, and most could say those are issues which everybody does have, and where experiments then would be okay for someone to do that on someone else, and just like psyops, one nation doing psyops on another nation and this sort of thing is some okay asymmetric war pattern, yet not when that's just on a chessboard, the corpse are all managed more or less by sort of one hand, and the central command more sort of to the intel. So where something can have not been allowed, of course, all gain of function sorts of things and what have you, but then it all goes somewhere else. And one hand, more or less, is sort of bankroll all of it, you see, isn't it? Yes, it is. And so in a new epoch, you've got the rainbow prophecy, more like what we're saying, and it's a common tradition, common law coming back. And the warrior really, where we are all, is can see a strange attractor, which is future paced, that this event where things are come to clear up things as they can, and that's just what happens because it's what makes sense. Things add up because it doesn't add up that such usufructing goes on from anybody's BC bonds and all sorts of things, which is your duty to assist to help the Treasury. It's your duty to assist to help clear things up where you've got quorum sensing and things in the system. That's how it's supposed to work, which is really a grand feast. That's what the jubilation is, and it's really a restoration, more of a title that has been removed, like we were saying, like the title of our title of Wuman. And so, as your ID is, as a real true name, it's from. You can use from because you're from the land, and words like verbs like of is obviously less, of course, but where you already have a lean against your own corpus because you've got reversionary interest in all the matter of what this is, and everybody does as a pool as we the people. And this is the real estate, you see, in this new age. And this begins an age of positive induction more from the fourth estate, because you really, and I can't see where jobbery has to be anymore. Where you've got a jubilation, you've got title given. Otherwise, there was just a bit of a stolen type of a condition of, coming from a common law trespass and a legal name fraud, which was just really an unconscionable, which most anybody would say in history and to the future and past, how that was an unconscionable contracting with a baby to have taken a title away. And so common law trespass there and legal name fraud after that. And someone's just a number in the system. And so one could really be more whole again, where time is, we could be more spending on being focused more on the things you could do that make sense versus lots of stuff which isn't going to help any of that. But yet to know where somebody's come from, it's really important, isn't it? One can look at, just see things stoically and look what the ethic is. And some of us go to bat where we are. And those are the very things which is a tempering and a causedness of what all this is of itself. Yeah, it really is from faith and honour and trust. And so how amazing is that? Because this is what holds everything together, is faith, honour and trust. And so one really is where a world is more together. And can you imagine, actually, that is the real agentic state, actually, you see? Yes, it is. So it's, if you talk about neoplasm in a system, you could see that bits and pieces are there which really is beyond the economy of what should be. And a normal vitality would be energy expended and released and no waste, and everything is cyclable. And neoplasm really is where a body couldn't have then had easy ability to be able to zero itself out. And a body does have the ability to naturally zero itself out, meaning to be able to depolarize from a polarized condition and be back at a resting state in the body, which is minus 71 millivolts per square centimeter cubed. And DNA, which is in your body, really is applied that causes oxidative metabolism to be, and in a neoplastic condition, that's silenced in the DNA instead by epigenetic factor. It's really wrong that maybe they called the other type of processing an aerobic glycolysis, because most people don't know how everything is like a protein or a fat is made up out of hydrogen, how much hydrogen is in all of it, including carbohydrate. And so most only can think of that being glycolysis being only one substance of itself, which is not right whatsoever, you see. But you could say that a path exists in the citric acid cycle where a modest way down the cycle, it can exit and you can get a couple of adenosine triphosphate molecules there. Inefficient, of course, because you could otherwise end up with 38. But at that point there, it can initiate things from energy that's stored within, but a lactic acid is left over as a result of it. And that's a normal process which we have, which epigenetically either is switched for more oxidative metabolism or switched for what's called aerobic glycolysis instead. And so where energy really is within the presence of oxygen and you've got a normal terrain, the body has this ability to sense itself to be in oxidative metabolism, which is really a normal type of metabolism for cells, and aerobic glycolysis, where that can have been switched on, it really was because the environment in the micro niche less than allowed it to have a proper resting potential, basically. So in the micro niche where things are, where indigestible protein can have existed, which really can't be broken down as not water soluble, like a whole range of things you could think of, which not really life food, which clogs the body and reduces all of its overall negative ground zeta potential, or you could say it's a static magnetic field in magneticity. And so something comes and occupies, whatever was, and it only can feel something where something was deprived. But it's interesting that when you occupy, isn't it interesting that something is deprived by occupation, isn't it? Yes?
Oh, yeah.
And even in our life, and there's systems that you can see existing. But we've got two pathways of energy that's generative and life colloid, the body's made up out of. Those aggregate, fuse, and differentiate inside ourselves, in the cells. And that sort of really demands a real neutralized type of proper negative redox inside the mitochondria. Otherwise, it really generates energy inefficiently, and lactic acid is the byproduct which ferments. And that's what neoplasm is. So fats and protein, which really is new toxic, it really clogs the energy pathway far more than anything else you could think of. Hydrogen doesn't do that and won't, and you can't get anything ferment to go unless you've got nitrogen there. So it's truly just disastrous that people could say, oh, salt causes this, or fat causes that, or protein causes this, or sugar causes this. It's absolutely that what's new toxic, which is dead, is going to beget dead. If you bring in life food, it's going to sort of beget more life. And so you basically really, in any system of efficiency, you've got things which are discharged properly. Otherwise, you've got lots of service charges, you've got all sorts of things going on, and that's not right whatsoever. But unless the system exists to help clear what that is up, there's a massive amount of waste, and ends up with all these derivatives, and the very thing which causes everybody to be busted, basically. But recognizing very things which is going on, what you can do, that's important. You can do things to improve your oxidative metabolic energy pathway back in, and you can block and stop the aerobic glycolysis pathway, and then Jubb cell rejuvenation and 4NR and a lot of things that we do really basically is based upon what this logic is. The latter really of a needed sort of growth where things are, where cells are, and all this which is an awareness is incorporated more into our body, and the body that comes from the land, which is the fourth estate. But yet, just like yours body, it has a corona, and and everyone has to have proper aerobic, like anabolic, capacity to manage ferment, and fermentation is a part of everything, and so aerobic glycolysis, which is sort of more fermentive relative pathway, requires nitrogen to be able to do that, and otherwise, without it, you've got a switch which causes DNA really that was silenced, where neoplastic condition is to be switched off, and you're getting switched back on again, oxidative metabolism. And so somebody could look into more what this is about, because it's sort of really upstream cleaning, and you're really talking more about, DNA and things. But occupying and depriving really is what's actual. And you can see that it's the fourth estate that should come fills in, which is what is the grand feast, and it's a strange attractor which just help clear things up. And that's really like putting a bank back more inside, where some controlledness is. Otherwise, currency just in the exchange in your body and our exchange with each other. And how does that actually, in a manner, relate to your BC bond, and the money that all gets taken from that? And what do you or anybody know much about the proper money mechanics of anything? But somewhere there, lots of money was spent, billions and billions of dollars, and it caused a little enclave somewhere. And like Gaza is a good example, 2.3 sort of million people, sort of very highly dense living, and just like 112 miles or something, I think, in length or whatever. But it's things where just is what happens like 10/7 more or less, and one can look into history and see times in past where carpet bombing has gone on, and where money has been spent. Was there any recall or hold it that wasn't right? Something about a parent where that happened, some justification was, which is a story. But you've got I think 18,000 tons or more, or something that's just been dropped there in that little area. And I think it's like 50 tons or something, I don't know, when I looked, maybe per square kilometre, which is about 0.6 of a mile or something. So it's 5 times more, I think, than what it might have been, estimated where Hiroshima was or something. But in life, something is there where fundedness was, and somebody's under an agentic state, but it was at anything from we the people, you see. Yes, and so where's the fourth estate where this is? We can see that, we can hear this, where some 33% or more of people are, and so that other 67% of people or more really got to be shifting more, and that has been a message of ours for quite some time. It's a real active, otherwise criminal RICO that anybody would allow, and it's sort of you and I really are standing by, and it's a felony in this prison to see crimes going on, and you don't actually say, hey, that isn't right, or you do what you can to correct this by letting officials know or whatever. But where ecological, anything that's ecological, right, is meant to be in your body, and what's not ecological can't be defended at all, you see. And so where something is not defendable, but you've got ecological, non-ecological parts within something, like somebody can spy on someone else, but you can do it, you can spy on your neighbour, you see, and everybody's neighbour spies on everybody else's, and they learn all the techniques and everything, and so they do that. And it's basic that the world all split up isn't not unity whatsoever. And does it all come just about actual because you've we all just stand by and it's okay to have made an unconscionable act with contracting with a baby, and then they're left with a pledging system. And until somebody learned how to authenticate their birth certificate, by taking that through and getting the registrar's seal acknowledged, and going through 3 departments, getting 3 seals and things, and eventually you become the holder of that, and it's postilled to you, and now you're the holder of it. But now, what can you do if you had to do something? One has to learn actually what the process is of all things are. But little by little, one could look and see, of course, something can truly be cleared up and should be. Wisely it would be, because why? Well, because then you've got a world and you've got people, and it's really carefully put, and people are caring about where anybody else is versus, oh, you did the wrong thing or you're not doing the right thing. It's like, it's a real condition of colloidal suspension ourselves. It's what's in the past might be called a zeta potential, but it really is a static magnetic field in magnicity. And blood is flowing because of this. And neoplasm, where anything is, it really is a lack of proper flow where that is. And the body, wherever some paralysis was, where learned helplessness exists, many could maybe see something, but they're just going to go following along, which they did, what some authority had said to them, versus shifting more into this agentic state where you could suddenly see scientific pieces, which is important, that makes things more for you, behind what's unity, and isn't it because you and I have a natural right? When you uphold title, this is very important. But where it was taken away by that Highness Act that we talked about, and so your BC bond is only made you to be into a ward of a circumstance where all that currency then just used, not necessarily having given you any consideration, which should. Consideration is what's supposed to be where contract is. And anybody could see how brazen it all is, and when it finished in 1979, for instance, where the killing fields were, there was millions of Cambodians, for instance, that was genocide, and through those previous years just before that. And you can look and see how the depressed go along, what that is, and can we see various patterns in the way that things have gone on, and who was ever brought to justice about this. I mean, and then when you ask anybody about the genocides anyway, like, do you know about the Armenian genocide? Most are going to just scratch their head, who, what? But it's forgotten what really things are about. And certainly in most all the nations, you've seen quite a bit of revolution, which was really slaughteredness and not any mercy given. And it is because, like what you're talking about, is you join life with life and the dead with the dead. Otherwise, you get people end up with more of a clogged system, and putting toxin in isn't going to help where that is. But protein and fat that isn't broken down, really is the major cause of the body's terrain not being able to be kept. Once the body's terrain is kept, you've got proper oxidative metabolism, and you've got negative redox, meaning you've got that resting potential that we talk about. Then also too, you've got parts of hydrogen exact, so you've got no sticky factor on the cell membrane. It's not sticking to things, and you've got your ability to be able to conduct energy. And so these are the 3 benchmarks that you're looking at, which is really more about the terrain of your body. But like we just were saying, none of that can get into a neoplastic condition much without nitrogen, matter of fact. And you really do need nitrogen to kick it off. Without that, so most people are eating way too much protein and things, and they just have no idea how bad that is, in fact. And lots of hypochondriacalness has been. Yet it's really if we look into it, we can see various non-carbon atom substance that we have within our body, which is a natural surfactant, which is so important. But hydrogen or sugar, which could be called sugar, okay, but it's really got a lot of hydrogen. It's really got 6 carbon atoms. It's got, I think, 12 hydrogen and 6 oxygen molecules. But those are actually combined, and you can combine that, and then you can make a pyruvate. And really, this really is what goes on in your cytoplasm within the interior of your cell, like that's a liquid. And you've got life colloid organelle that's interior of a cell in colloidal biology, and you've got colloid of life, and you've got life colloid forming from these spores by a process of aggregation, fusion, and differentiation, and this is how DNA is formed. So you have life colloid transmutation, which forms more. So you've got with phosphate molecules, you end up with a molecule which is really 3 phosphate molecules there, which is called adenosine triphosphate. And that energy, when one phosphate molecule is broken away, it releases a north negative to get work done, and then it comes to be called adenosine diphosphate. And if you've got lipohydrate and things and such like that, you can be restoring back quick smart that diphosphate back to adenosine triphosphate. So glycolysis, really, where that's not occurring like it would, you've got a sequence which uses like 10 chemical reactions, more or less, which use simple hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and phosphate, which all substance can be broken down more to anything, protein, fat, and as I said, nitrogen has to be there for the big kickoff of it. You could put sugar in a jar and wait for the day come home, and it's not going to really kick off anything much. But if you've got some nitrogen in there, it's really going to work, but otherwise it won't. So you've got aggregation, fusion, and differentiation of these life colloids, and they are a molecule of pyruvate, which really is a noted protein and fat and carbohydrate type of thing, which dismantles, like what we're saying, into the constituent components that's needed. And what's called more aerobic glycolysis really is where one's own body surfactant isn't really present like it's supposed to be, but when it's highly present, as it should be, this N-acetylneurominic acid really is perfect. And if you minus a hydrogen, you've got a molecule of a protein which can be a carbohydrate or a fat, or can end up as lactic acid. And when non efficient energy pathways is occurred because the terrain is really blocked, you've got this switch which occurs more, and like I said, and that DNA switch causes aerobic glycolysis to have formed more, and it just stores energy from protein, from fats, and from carbohydrate, and from lactic acid, and it applies it to cause aggregation, fusion, and differentiation more of itself. Like we have a recapitulative past where we came from somewhat, but once pressure was no longer, or where pressure was, of course, that finished, and so our body switches more into oxidative metabolism. But for a short moment in time, our recapitulative past, sort of in embryology, you go through a process of simple fetal endoplastic cells, which are getting energy more from aerobic glycolysis. So, where we keep in mind that someone should be wise that they're looking at life colloid transmutation, where one element really is transmutating to another, and most people maybe not even ever heard about that. But hydrogen excess certainly is not the cause of neoplasm, quite the opposite, in fact. And people thinking that because sugar has hydrogen in it. That must be not right. It's just complete opposite, matter of fact. Excessive protein, fat, and glucose, and all lactic acid, which really isn't cleared, an excess of itself and heavy, that trips that DNA pathway not to necessarily be efficient like it's supposed to be. And it's really wrong that anybody would have thought just that aerobic glycolysis isn't right. It's that the body switched to that only where something is. It's going to produce a lot of lactic acid, which then all that substance ends up fermenting. And that, see, so it's in a niche where things are. And so what one wanted to happen, it only could have where nitrogen was present. And so neoplastic cells where nitrogen is, where the body is really requires it, it'll rob it from the body. It can't do anything except like rob all the nitrogen from the body, and so that creates eventual wastedness. And there's several, of course, extraneous types of neurotoxin and things, and yet you've got truly terrific things which could help repair and improve and get back your proper negative redox like you're supposed to have. And the research which I've done more into, in society really is more looking at how it's just been hell-bent leather, actually, where society is to cause hypochondriacal types of behaviour because lots of things sold and what have you. And rather than actual science, you've got a level of including a lot of things which neoplastic tradition, but many of those people cannot tell you even what that is. And so that they'll be running along saying whatever they have said, or somebody's heard, and that could end up being a lot of hypochondriacal types of conditions, actually. But energy really pathways, opened up. You've got proper negative redox going on where your body is, and you can do that by improving albumin. Somebody could look into more Jubb cell rejuvenation to get a bit more into that. But I think that you could really see that where someone is searching and they're spiritual, you can see them searching for agreement with their adversary, and that is being you and I being more ethical and learning how to do things such. And otherwise, like anybody there, they're really prolonging more sufferedness and things, and a lot of highly what's not ethical per se, or really not with faith, honor, or trust, but something more threatened out. And if somebody doesn't send money, then they're going to do this and sort of very controlling. And so where anybody's given power, where government certainly can have things it would exercise to have taken right away, those are never ever put back unless something really radical comes along to cause that to be. So what's the biggest issues really is currency and how that's being spent where anybody looks. And we can see definitely wrongdoing going on where the house is, where the world has been in history until things change. You've got something more decentralized. You've got a centralized condition which is set up not necessarily to properly function anymore. And you've got bills, all sorts of things being passed, which is so mixed up, and it's all set up to actually take the place down instead of build it back up again as a republic, which it should be. And some haven't thought about it, but a hand far away doesn't have necessary care that your sovereignty might be, per se. And that just is commercial of someone's interest for themselves. And isn't this really what goes on where you've got all these false flaggy types of things and nations doing that to others and things, and a centralized condition going on that relates to it all? And isn't it when people could look at all these events that have gone on, a lot of short selling was and borrowing of stock that would sell, with a likelihood that it would fall, and buying into a future that way to make a profit from it. And so, you see massive sort of spiking where short selling is, and that principle that goes on wherever calamity has been in a whole range of circumstances. How could such prior knowledge be? It's a statistical oddity that would be, unless those are things which are pretty much saying that things are more controlled by the hand above the government. But it's really sounding an alarm bell more where you and I, where we could see a lot of what rights are just be taken away, and states no longer necessarily being, and things being removed from where what grassroots groundedness is, and otherwise you've got energy just being taken away from the states, because you've got everybody going along apparently with the COVID plan or with the carbon tax, and how much is that cost? It's a fortune. Yet it's China and India that really have energy in a moment, and are they, or anybody sort of that sort of clean energy? Yet it's a third of the world which really uses a lot of coal, and they need that actually, because what is the transition for any, and you've got all of it said that the reason why that shouldn't be, of course, is because that's impacting global warming more, which it's a crime itself that energy or discretion of any official is, it really isn't for the betterment of all of us, but because it's coming from billionaires and people running something which can have a power beyond where you and I are. And basically that really has only gone on because you've got some monopolization. Otherwise, like natural gas, though you've got very low emission sort of property and things, and a lot cleanliness and abundance more, yet where you make it, turn it into something which is scarce, you're driving the price up and control it. And we the people is the real estate, but commodity is really where all attention could be wrongfully. But our financial future more is we the people is the real estate. Otherwise, you've got gold fingering, and you've got lone rangers that all, like rising stars, all got set up in various nations, funded out, and energy really comes to be more scarce in their own consideredness, as every talk is. And so shouldn't that be expensive? Yes, well, these people can make a living from what that is. It's really alarm bells, where somebody should have that. You've got lots of material that's like in the blood that's spiking it, for instance, and that's just not having proper consent or transparency, where something is jammed, and it's like cryptocurrency that's just put into where launderedness a lot is. A lot of criminal activity being set up around what that is, because it totally hasn't been regulated per se, and used a lot where a lot of illicit stuff goes on, like organ harvesting and this sort of a thing. So it's really personal liberty you and I have more, where you are in your judgingness of freedom and doing what you can. For we the people, it's sort of not having to go after someone. That's not right. Most everybody is in some circumstance where something is. It's really like being where things are, to look to see how that kill box of that common law trespass and legal name fraud really is something out of hand and doesn't give you or I or people a proper natural right. And so it's really a 9/11 or a 10/7 or whatever, or a 3/11. But where Alphabet Superland is really run by not you or I, and they could be just wanting to do not any swap per se, where anything is we all could stand by, but that can be not the policy that we would imagine. But mass casualty is really where that's going on, where the war is, and where prisoners are. And how could you say most of these people aren't political prisoners of themselves? It really, it's a 10/7 where policy is, and that people are being collectively punished. And those events, like what we talk about, those false flags. But who could really be? Who could anyone want to set anything up like that unless it was something? It just didn't come from you or I nor common law. It really came from let's control, let's do this, and let's have some asymmetric war condition, and that just isn't acceptable per se, really, for any nation. And if you and I are more internally regulated, we could be assisting to block all the user fructing that comes out of your BC bond, like what we talk about. But it's just to fly blind and be asked just to go ahead and just mow down anything that's moving. Obviously, you or I or anybody just get caught up in what that is. I've had lots of nuisances in my own life, and people can. And those are things which should really be cleared up. Otherwise, it's just an indiscriminate, go back, reload, and off you go again. And there's no capacity to really be able to separate anybody who's friendly from who's foe apparent, and just everything just gets collectively mowed down where something is. And this is sort of what happens to children in cities by these laws which are set up not to protect it all, but for people to become victims of the laws that's made. And did you and I ever give anybody permission just to be in the Apache helicopter and be so pumped up because you were told you must absolutely just wipe out anything that's going on down there, because it's all something which everybody must be a bit of a combat, and before it you have like a lot of priming going on where things are, where somebody is made into an object relative, and then you can see the effect of what that does, things going on. It's a real occupy and deprive. But where people could see that anybody is pleading more, where they're for captives to be released and begging, but often they are saying, please, that nation where some things are actually is killing them. So one need to look what's behind all Alphabet Superland, certainly, but in our own self, because it starts where you or I are, where we are ourselves, because isn't it your bond, and isn't this you've got a reversionary interest in? And if you just stand by and only in lost at sea and you don't come into the holy sea, how could you make a difference to help where things are your own self? If you don't have awareness in spiritualness, that could get you. If you don't have awareness in nutrition, that could get you. If you don't have awareness more in law, that could get you. It really behooves people to have more awareness in cost discipline anymore. But military cover-up, which you see evidence of, and you've got lots of people murdered, and small arms, and lots of tank shelling went on, and not misguided as to who and how did that happen, where bodies were really burned. Lots of evidence shows there was a sustained approval a lot to go on with a cover-up to stop and sanitize where news is, where wars are. Could somebody say that's not the case? of course, part of the whole thing where some monopolization is to begin with of itself is some nepotistic condition, and protesters really could be fatigued, of course, and where the people could be demanding that something sort of really finishes, that something should begin. You've got to negotiate, got to make agreement, and it's ultimate that something would have to be. But why is it that there should not be a meat grinder going on where something else is? It's just really the COP like equation that starts out with carbon dioxide, a CO2, and then all the rest stands for getting rid of people, basic, in an equation, because now you're going to have CO2 and that's going to be zero. It's a very ridiculous sort of concept, which we'll just say something small about as we wrap this up. But I think that it's really a thinning out where anyone is, and certain ethnic cleansing going on where people are themselves, and ideas behind a lot of that, which isn't anything from where the people unity was, but run by agents that don't have a necessary same conditioning as you and I, and that people in cells, and you've got an East and a West conditioning about that, like going on behind the scene. And, you know, that's what you and I are allowing, because where's the fourth estate where this is, you see? And if something is occupied, isn't that afterward then just depriving everything? This is what our story's about. There's something really that's expendable, apparently. No, it's not, especially when it's people are expendable in someone's idea. That's not a proper thing where somebody says that's the final solution. That's ridiculous. That's not even logical. And where alphabet soup land set up, and one of them is just the fall guy because something is fictional of itself, and not even a body, only a body politic, not a body connected from the land. And so, like a big old false opposition. And isn't that like the distraction going on where things are, and things are operating more in a cell and a cell more? And so how could anyone be conscious too much where something goes on where that is? And you've got many transport planes all fly where anything is, and massive amounts of ammunition, and that's not to do necessarily with any ceasefire, of course, but a continuous emerging more consequence, and it's real co-opted and owned more by people that make a lot of money out of it. And it's co-opted and owned more by you and I, where we stand by and we allow something which doesn't have to be, where the pen is mightier than the sword, like we're talking about. And otherwise, everything isn't really as it really should be, for sure. You've got patterns that make longevity. And you could see, things which really cause you and I to have a longer life and go way past the age of 100. And why shouldn't somebody have a good long life? Because that really serves a positive good for all, where someone comes to have greater wisdom and can pass things on. And it's a typical thing that you'd have generations of people around you. And that makes an assist to cause you and I to to have a longer life. And longevity. Longer life really is found more in areas where people are closer more to nature, of course. And the secret's more where this is how, one can remain more agile within a circumstance and situation like that. And the environment is really good more and assists with your cognitive functioning and things. And it's a nation which really is caused to have shifted its corporate alliance. And we the people really should be, which is, customer based and not service customer based, and then run by the service providers. How long would it be more for someone to really have the question, which is only just starts to come up, like, hey, maybe the donated blood shouldn't be, or is that okay, and should that be screened? You only start to have one state just more recently, so they're looking at things that's like that. Of course, you've got a couple of states that just have banned the toxins and things. It's the that system is the warfare which is going on. Like I said, controlled, and currency is controlled, and food is controlled, and the things that goes into people is also being controlled. And you've got non-GMOs, and you've got really lots of nothing going on that really properly investigates war crime as it should. And the act alone, really, of an impendedness, really is to degrade more what the war victims' aid would have been. And those are things is quite the opposite, of anything about longevity. But it's very garish that anybody could profit from organs and things just like that, which you could see going on, and people getting caught, and more recently in Japan, just being found where people were engaged more and looking to see that something is really large about it all, and yet who got caught with it, involved where it maybe only got a little bit of a light sentence and a couple $1,000 fine, $6,000 fine or something. You can see where attention is, can't you? You know what I mean? Honest. And I think that to wrap things up a little bit, I mean, you've got that equation, which is pretty like that COP, SEC, COP, SEC, and CO, which was CO2, that equaled then people, which you reduce apparently in the equation because you're zeroing it out. And then you not having to give services too much. You don't have to have any more energy expenditure, and you don't have to have any carbon used. And now if you do, well, you're going to have to pay for that. And so otherwise you're not at zero. See, this is ridiculous. That's ridiculous, honest, completely, when you look at it. It's really how the select can have done something. But you and I, we should select, which is the venue more from the land, that rather than a commercial venue. And otherwise, select big old depopulation, get rid of those that are sort of only put in terms of something negative as a subject, or even just some action, which isn't, you or I. So anyway, it really is, we could live in a world where we could be aware more of transmutation. We could be aware how blood is formed in your lungs and intestine, and we could learn how blood is formed more from aggregation, fusion, and differentiation, and doesn't have any DNA in itself, but where it becomes activated and still it can transmutate itself into a immune cell and things, which does have DNA and things in it. And these are things which is what's going on. And we only were put to be just like machinery and industrialization to come to have technology, and final that you have technology, you could always see who was there to be used where something is being replaced. And so, you're seeing AI just and all this sort of stuff just replacing the robots and what have you. Anyway, it gets all funded out by billionaires and things, and an idea which isn't anyone's is to be all transhuman and connected to cyber, but it's a cyber security in a world where the leaders really don't really care too much about whether immunity exists or not, or whether popular opinion exists or not. Why? Because it's who's paying the piper where that is, yes? And then that's what has to come home to roost, doesn't it? Yeah? Yes, it does. Anyway, that's the real jubilation and great Republic of Peace, mate. Anyway, hope we had a good show, mate. We'll get a good recording. Anyway, we'll catch up to each other, in the next little bit. Anyway, give us a call when you have a moment. Love you, mate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jubb.
Catch up to us a bit, yeah? Call us back in a bit, yeah? Love you, mate.